to the 53rd episode of the Dallas Housing Coalition's Housing for All webinar series. I'm Austin Holmes, your host and a Senior Development Associate at Dominium and a member of Dallas Housing Coalition Steering Committee. We are wrapping up our mini series of interviews with our Dallas Zoning 101 Community Talk facilitators. You've already met and heard from Jennifer Rango, co-founder of Rio Planning, and Brandon Blanker, founder of 3BL Strategies. Now, today, we are excited to have with us Desiree D. Powell, who will be leading community talks in South Dallas, Hickory Meadow, South Oak Cliff, and Redbird, and East Oak Cliff, including the Bottoms. Dee is the creator and founder of Do Right by the Streets, an urban planning and place creation group that puts communities of color first. After graduating from UTA with her master's in city and regional planning, she gained valuable experience through working as a planner in the DFW area, such as in the city of Lancaster, the city of Grand Prairie, and the city of Port Arthur. Her commitment to Dallas has led her to create the Sunny South Dallas Food Park, a community-driven initiative that seeks to create economic mobility and opportunity for South Dallas. She has also supported work and researched the 10th Street Historic District in the Bottoms community. Welcome, Dee.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
That's awesome. Thank you. We're happy to have you here. So
Most definitely.
we'll get right into it. So you lead DRBTS, Do Right by the Streets, and your background is deeply rooted in community, equity, and placekeeping. How do you define your mission as an urban planner and place curator, and what drives the identity of Do Right by the Streets?
So for the mission, I would say it's always been simplifying planning
Hmm.
for the everyday person, particularly in communities of color. When we talk about zoning and land use, it's a lot of jargon, it's a lot of complexities, and so that's always been the mission to make it understandable for somebody who's six to somebody who's 66. And then as far as like the place curation, it's just about helping people under, not helping them, bringing awareness to what they already know to be true about their neighborhoods and communities, that they have value, that they matter, and how to start kind of bringing development using zoning as a tool instead of as a barrier to do so.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that because zoning has historically often been a barrier, and so flipping it on its head, using it as a tool, that's a really cool way to come at it.
For sure.
Definitely. So, your work often bridges planning theory, design, and lived experiences in communities of color. So, what are the core principles or values that guide how you do the planning and placemaking, especially in communities that have historically been marginalized?
Just kind of like what you said as far as their lived experiences. So a lot of communities have experienced zoning. Zoning has been done to them, and
Mm,
planning policy as a whole. So even if we're talking about like land use, all of that ties to urban renewal,
yeah.
segregation, redlining. So particularly your elders in your community, they probably lived through one or more of those instances. So their lived experiences really help create the core value of this is where we talk from, this is where we learn from. So I learned from them listening to their stories of experiencing being in segregated schools or
Hmm.
work environments. And then I'm able to bring in the planning theory and the policy and the foundational stuff of how those things, how planning helped perpetuate that, but
Hmm.
now how to try to kind of right the wrongs or at
Yeah.
least kind of flip it on its head. So a lot of that comes from the community
Hmm.
of those core values, which is really like in their stories and their lived experiences.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm curious what do you have any, examples or instances where you've used that lived experience and done that, flipped it on its head and then had an example where the zoning, that maybe a zoning change or overlay or something that you were pushing for was then used as a tool rather than a barrier like it has been historically used?
So I would say in South Dallas, so the city just adopted the South Dallas area plan, which had been in the works for numerous years. And so,
Hmm.
although I didn't have anything to do directly with the area plan, a lot of the neighbors that had been involved with the food park and was coming out to that, we always joke that the food park is a feel good spot, but I do find a way to like merge some planning in there. So having the city come out, having some information about it that people can kind of pick up at their leisure.
Hmm.
Um, I've been able to help neighbors understand like the language in the area plan that if they couldn't get to a meeting or they went to the meeting and they just kind of felt overwhelmed by it. And so being able to change that on its head of that zoning had been outdated
Yeah.
since the early 90s. And now with this new area plan and better understanding of it as from community members as a whole, it is okay, how do we use this now to not necessarily reimagine, but create South Dallas in a way that a lot of them had seen prior as kids from their
Yeah.
parents and their grandparents. And so the area plan would probably be the most relevant example in South Dallas.
Yeah, no, that makes yeah, that's really cool. And that's it's cool that they were able to kind of get that benefit of it, and we're hopefully going to start to see it take shape in the built environment now that the plan's
For
been
sure.
adopted. Yeah.
Yeah, most
So
definitely.
so yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the that food park that you mentioned and what DRBTS's involvement with it has been. So you've done the South Dallas Food Park, and then you with DRBTS you also hosted the a sneaker drive and a community market at Vickery Meadow. So could you speak to kind of what all goes into coordinating these successful events? And how do you ensure attendees, learn what they're supposed to learn from them, and just everything that goes, the story behind them, the food park, sneaker drive, community market,
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah. So at Victory Meadow, that was something that I was working on with Better Block at the time. So that is in North Dallas and a predominantly Hispanic as well as international community. So a lot of
Hmm.
very diverse, a lot of different languages, a lot of different backgrounds. That particular space was um, excuse me, a very high traffic fatality as well as gun
Hmm.
violence area. And it's just the street is just really weird how it's designed. So that one really just came about fairly simple of they were already activating and doing something on that lot. And so I just reached out to them to ask if I could do like a small community market that brought in people in the neighborhood or people that were willing to come to that spot to kind of show that it can be utilized as a safe space. And so we did that. And we did after kind of like after school care programming as well. So it was a spot that parents could pick up their kids or kids can meet older siblings to get picked up.
Yep.
That was, it just had things going on. So it kind of helped me
Yeah.
experience some of those other things. The sneaker drive aspect of it was some of my like desire of
Yeah.
some of my likes of sneakers. And so being able to have people donate sneakers was really dope. And just having people have the choice.
Hmm.
That was around Christmas-ish time, so
Hmm.
just kind of alleviating one of those things. We paired that with groceries just because you always need groceries, and this was like prime pandemic-ish or right after like after things that kind of started to open up.
Hmm.
And so a big part of that, similarly with the food park, was community. A lot of people um, were kind of dying for human interaction within their
Yeah.
neighborhoods because they couldn't, and Zoom wasn't, even though it became like the norm for on the professional side,
Yeah.
people were just Zoom fatigued. And so
Yeah.
switching
And it
gears to
don't feel
South
the
Dallas,
same, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't hit the same. And so same thing in South Dallas when I started the original food park, which was the MLK food park. People were just happy to get outside. I mean, a lot, of course, they were still kind of nervous and on the fence
Hmm.
about it, but a lot of them, from older people, particularly because they were more susceptible, they had lost neighbors, longtime neighbors, friends. They were just happy to see other people,
Yeah.
just to see them interact with each other at that food park. And as we've grown,
Hmm.
has really been like the guiding force. So I think what makes them successful is community.
Yeah.
Um, they push it, they talk about it in the neighborhoods. Like I can't be everywhere at once, and so
Yeah.
they really help do a lot of the legwork and help me do the legwork and help me be in rooms that, as a non-citizen and somebody who's not from South Dallas, probably wouldn't be in.
Yeah.
And that's the intention. Intention of it is to use my knowledge and my background in planning, and then working in local government, so something like that, public policy stuff or permitting stuff, to take care of. That way, when community comes out, it's
Hmm.
literally a hassle-free experience.
Smooth. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it's
That's
supposed to
awesome.
be. That's the
Yeah.
whole intention behind it. So that I think that's what really helps make them successful and curates them. And we kind of play on both sides of we do the boring stuff, so like the planning policy, but we also have elements of like festivals or markets.
Yeah.
We just kind of embed this idea that we want people to be familiar with it. We don't want to be like
Yeah.
a one time, kind of like a one hit wonder kind of thing.
Exactly. Now, I do gotta ask because I think you're very humble in terms of your involvement in these various instances, but I find them really, really cool. And it seems like you've got kind of an intuitive way of understanding how to blend some of these things together. Like you said, the technical stuff that you need to know with making it enjoyable. And you've got kind of like this way of intuitively making it so that the community is really leading a lot of this stuff and the community is you're really kind of shaping what's happening with based on what the community already kind of has in place and making it really jive with the community as opposed to superimposing your thoughts and your way of doing something on
Exactly.
and so that's I think that's really cool. So I was wondering if you could, and I think that's really important, myself as a developer and some folks might be interested the interaction with community, building bonds with community, building something that long term is good for that community is a challenge for a lot of people. It's a challenge for me sometimes. And so I was wondering if you could maybe speak on, what it is in your background or what it is in kind of how you have gained the interest that you have gained that enables you to so intuitively kind of come in and prepare things for a community that they're able to receive really well while also kind of getting those, veggies, so to speak, of what they need to learn. It's very impressive. So curious about your background that led to that.
No, for sure. I appreciate that. The first part of that I'll say like from community of believe it or not, the actual human first person to person interaction of like local urban planning when I got out of grad school was like terrifying. I
Mm,
did not enjoy it.
okay.
And it just kind of it had to grow on me of like interacting with people because when they come to local government, it's usually with a complaint or something is wrong.
Yeah. It's not like, hey,
So
you're
that
doing great. Just wanted to tell
never,
you.
very rare in local
Yeah.
government. But that those instances really helped me kind of like a kind of have a thicker skin than what I already had, and then B of early on I knew like it was super complex. I mean, me learning it as somebody who went to planning school, but then learning it in a city was a whole totally different ball game. And
Hmm.
so it was just kind of giving grace to residents that didn't know either. Like if I didn't know, they didn't know, even if they had
Yeah.
been living in this city for their whole lives. So I want to really like level set with that. A lot of it was learning together and just kind of being transparent with residents that you know I want to learn this better so you can know it and so you can tell somebody that not to say not so you don't have to call me, but
Hmm.
you have this information just off the top of your head at the
Yeah.
very simplest way.
Yeah.
Um, that's really been the driving force. That kind of tells or dovetails into for me. Again, my parents grew up in a very small town in northeastern Louisiana, so my
Hmm.
very rural. So not to say like I grew up around this like the conversations around planning. I didn't even know what that was till I was actually getting ready to go to grad school. But
Hmm.
I grew up seeing vast like open space and land
Yeah.
and having just not having those conversations, but hearing older people talk. And
Yeah.
so I've always been really interested in like migration, the way people move, why they
Yeah.
move, especially if they go from like we were talking a little bit earlier, going from Maryland to Texas. Like that's
Yeah.
an insane move. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But people do it all the time, and
Hmm.
so that interest was just like I always got that sense of community and family from my family, schools that I've gone to,
Hmm.
being in sports, and I just when I had to like find a real job, I tried to find something that could coalesce those things as best as
Yeah.
possible. And so traditional planning, like in an office,
Hmm.
was not the move. But I recognized that if I learned that, then I could probably get away from my desk to do some of this other stuff, which was
Yeah.
bringing people to City Hall and it not be to complain or not because they are
Yeah.
unhappy, but because they want to talk
Yeah.
and
They want to
just
talk. They want to
being
learn.
able to
Yeah.
being able to flow in neighborhoods. I will say for older people and then like definitely the younger generation that's getting more interested in real estate and engineering and architecture, it is for the older generation it is they just want to talk to somebody about it because they've seen it
Yeah.
happen and they've heard the things, but they either have never really encountered a black planner at my age,
Yeah.
or just like the knowledge on both ends of it.
Hmm.
Because I usually don't go into conversations and tell people I'm a planner. I just
Yeah.
say like, oh yeah, I like history, and I
Yeah.
just kind of let it play out that way. And then for
Yeah.
the younger generation, it is just that interest in real estate
Hmm.
and how to be an impact in community in a different way. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional ways that we've seen, but
Hmm.
the concept of buying back the block has really kind of blown up again, and
Yeah.
so that makes it really easy to coalesce two of um that's their everyday life, their lived experience,
Yeah.
and how can they kind of start to do that and make the be a change right now at 17, 18,
Yeah.
what have you.
That's huge. I mean, you're describing being a bridge in many ways. The older generation, younger generation, different parts of the country, and you kind of had that, natural interest in it, and then you got the technical teaching overlaid upon that, and so it kind of enables you to speak a lot of languages with it, and then make it so you kind of bring a lot of people to the table. So
For sure.
that's really cool, and really important as we kind of go to
Thank
these
you.
next steps in terms of getting everyone activated and building what we want to build in terms of our city. So, you've spoken on and you've acted on ideas like temporary to permanent activation, embedding in neighborhoods and equity first. How do you translate these complex topics, including the history of zoning reform and things like that, and concepts like the missing middle? How do you've kind of described how you got that background to be able to do that? How does it actually look whenever you're having these conversations, to talk about these kind of complex ideas?
Um, so again, I'll use Dallas as an example. It
Hmm.
is showing them what they already don't want or what they don't like necessarily,
Yeah.
or kind of like massaging in of what you think the perception of like multifamily, for example,
Yeah.
of that's just apartments, or those just have to be apartments that are on housing.
Hmm.
And that may not be the case. People
Hmm.
can also use different ways, different types of programs to actually buy a home. But
Hmm.
what townhomes look like, what duplexes look like,
Hmm.
and really just kind of peeling back the layers of back in the day, it might have been somebody that stayed next to them that was on housing and they didn't know. It didn't change how they interacted with their neighbors. It didn't change how they felt in community.
Hmm.
And so really kind of tying again, like you said, those that idea of missing middle. They may not know missing middle, the terminology, but
Yeah.
if I say, hey, you know that if they take me, if we run around or they show me on the map, or they say, oh, that used to be so and so's house. I was like, well,
Yeah.
how would that look if it was a house again, or if it was potentially a house that could house two separate families? They're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that'd be fine. We would love anything that just for rather than it sitting vacant. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily using the verbiage and the language all the time, but showing
Hmm.
real life examples of what they can typically tell me what was there,
Yeah.
and then like having that conversation of what could be, what
Yeah.
it could translate to. Same thing with zoning reform of they can tell you the things that have changed in South Dallas and in other neighborhoods that I've worked in. They can probably pinpoint to you the moment that it
Hmm.
changed. Knew
Hmm.
it came from the city, didn't really know why.
Yeah.
Um, and to them, that's just like it's the change of times and it's these revolving doors. But on the back end, it has been policy changes and it has been zoning changes, and most of it has been detrimental. And so, showing them examples of cities that and communities that are similar makeup, whether that be black or brown,
Yeah.
and having the historical like kind of knowledge of it. Okay, how can you tap back into it and use these policies to resurge this idea of economic mobility, community, people, so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
it's just trying to tie as many real life examples and real life instances into it as possible,
Hmm.
because that's what people correlate with the most of. They don't hear like placekeeping and
Yeah.
placemaking. They don't hear that, and they
That
might,
doesn't
but
resonate. Yeah.
nah. It's just like okay, it's something that's going on at the cultural center, or something going on
Yeah.
at the lot across from X, Y, and Z, and they can work with that and understand that a whole lot better than this is a placekeeping project.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't,
I
yeah,
love how you break that down because it's in the planning world, but also just in the broader real estate world, I feel like there's definitely kind of this over reliance on the particular verbiage
for
of
sure.
what everything's this called this, it's called that, and it can, whether it's someone trying to just get into basic real estate investment and they're, struggling to figure out what a cap rate is, or if it's, people struggling to understand what missing middle really means, or place keeping it, whatever it is. I think that sometimes the over reliance on those words really, eliminates a lot of really good voices from the conversation. But what you're doing is kind of throwing that out the window and not relying on those words, but just explaining what it means. And then these concepts, whenever you break it down, are really not that complicated. It's like sometimes the words make it seem super complicated, but overall this stuff is really not crazy. And people probably already have, maybe their own words or things to describe what, the technical, planning or real estate, language really already says. So that's so helpful to break it down for folks. So
No,
that's
for sure.
that's huge. I mean, so I think that leads really well into these community talks that you're going to be leading. So, looking at those community talks, and they're designed to be beginner level. What encouragement to our audience or the potential people that would come to your talks would you like to provide? And what should someone, what encouragement can you give them, and what should someone expect going to one of those talks from you?
So I would say come open minded
Okay.
about zoning in general, good,
Hmm.
bad, and different.
Yeah.
And come curious
Yeah.
of what you've seen and what has been like again, good, bad, or indifferent. And people will
Hmm.
probably say it's been bad.
Hmm.
Um, but be willing to take that in. Okay, I didn't know that, and I may not love all of it, but I can see how it's beneficial for the group and not
Yeah.
just maybe me as an individual. Definitely come with a community sense of this is how like rural reform works, especially from a policy side. Something as
Hmm.
complex as zoning, it's gonna take like multiple community members and communities championing that we need the reform, even if it doesn't affect me
Yeah.
personally. I wanted to benefit you as if you were my neighbor or if you,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. So just coming curious, coming open minded, and coming with questions. We're
Yeah.
learning together. You know what I'm saying?
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you've encouraged me. I'm locked in. I'm good. I'm be down to go. So,
Okay,
um,
then it's working.
cool. Yeah. So after the talks conclude, I think they're gonna wrap up November 12th.
Mm-hmm.
The Dallas Housing Coalition will be hosting the inaugural Resident Housing Summit. That's gonna be on November the 22nd. Hopefully we're going to be bringing many of the community talk attendees from across the city together with your peer facilitators, Jennifer, Brandon. How would you like to see the attendees to your first round of talks? How would you like to see them show up, and what would you like for them to bring and apply at the resident housing summit and beyond? What are you hoping people kind of have as takeaways, and then can kind of speak to whenever we all come together for that resident housing summit?
First, bring your neighbor, and
Mm,
like letting your neighbor know, especially if you
yeah.
can come into the talks. Taking back what you heard and what you learned. And for the housing summit, it is looking again at housing holistically of
Hmm.
not just what isn't working. I feel like we've all been in those conversations of
Yeah.
what's not working, and that's not working. Constantly talking about that,
Mm,
but coming into that conversation with solutions, no matter how
hmm.
small or how big or medium sized, of what if X, coming with ideas, coming with things that you've heard in all of the zoning one-on-one talks, and thinking about how that can just even transform your neighborhood, transform your street if you don't want to go as wide as like your whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
I heard what y'all were saying about zoning. Okay, how can we maybe advocate for this in our neighborhood of
Yeah.
duplexes or different setbacks? Because now we know what setbacks are, and now we know
Hmm.
what duplexes can look like as far as
Yeah.
character and style. So yeah, bringing a neighbor for sure.
Yeah.
And then coming with solutions of all sizes.
That's awesome. Yeah, being, a little more solution minded and outcome oriented, as opposed to just, looking at the problems. And also I think that's super important, the bring a neighbor aspect, because that's really how this all works is,
For sure.
you have the conversation, and then if it's just those people, that's one thing. But if then they can have the conversation with the neighbors, that's how it truly spreads, and you really get that community awareness that you're really seeking to achieve. So that's really cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
most definitely.
Awesome, Dee. Well, is there anything we didn't get to discuss today that you'd like to share with our audience, or anything else you're working on?
I think that's it. Zoning mine start on October 21st.
Okay,
And so excited to be in different places around South Dallas, Oak Cliff, Vickery Meadow, and we have a food park coming up that weekend before on the 18th. So if people
nice.
have not seen what we're doing, it's on the 18th at the South Dallas Cultural Center.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome. Well, Dee, thanks again for
Of
joining us
course.
this morning, and thank you for all that you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. All right. So before we sign off today, we, as always, love to encourage you to check out the DHC's upcoming events on our website, including the Zoning 101 community talks that we've been discussing on this mini series, and our second annual housing summit occurring November the 21st, and our inaugural resident housing summit that we were just speaking about, and that will be on November the 22nd. Follow our social media for more updates to stay connected with the Housing for All webinar series. Visit our website, DallasHousingCoalition.com, to subscribe to our communications and become a member of the coalition today. Thank you for tuning in to our 53rd Housing for All webinar series, where we discuss whether Dallas is big and if it's truly big enough for everyone. Have a great week.